We will start in like maybe 2 minutes. Masroor, is that okay?
So usually we wait for a couple of minutes for people to
Okay,
join, and
that's fine.
then yeah. Ananya, I think we should start now. We are already 5 minutes into the webinar, and let people join. Uh,
Okay, sure. Yeah, that's what I was also thinking. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Ananya Tiwari, and I work as a Senior Research Associate with the Center for Chronic Disease Control and Center for Environmental Health, Public Health Foundation of India. I welcome you all and for joining this webinar on building sustainable food systems across Indian healthcare sector, best practices and market opportunities. Today we have Dr. C.M. Bhagat, who's the director of Bhagat Hospitals, New Delhi, and Dr. G.V. Ramajanelu, who's the executive director, Center for Science, Center for Sustainable Agriculture, Secunderabad, with us as the guest speakers to discuss and share their views on this crucial issue. We would like to thank you both for taking out time from your busy schedules and joining us today. We welcome you both. The agenda that we have for today's event includes 10-minute presentations from both our speakers, which will be followed by a short discussion on the role of Indian health sector towards building institutional procurement supply chain for sustainably grown food. This will be followed by a short round of question and answers and audience interactions. But before we begin, I would like to take an opportunity to introduce you all to why we are having this webinar. So GGHH is a global community of healthcare establishments that works towards transforming health sector and foster a healthy future for people and the environment. It functions on the basis of 10 goals and is present across 72 countries, representing the interests of more than 43,000 hospitals and health centers. When GGHH was, these are the 10 goals: leadership, chemicals, waste, energy, water, transportation, food, pharmaceuticals, buildings, and purchasing. When GGHH was launched in India, it was launched under the name of Health and Environment Leadership Platform, and which essentially is, it consists of 73 members representing over 7,700 healthcare institutions and the interests of 27,000 physicians in India. While the platform was launched in India, it only had a focus of establishing or running its strategies on the basis of 4 of the GGHH goals, which essentially were energy, water, waste, and leadership. But it was realized that once the platform will get established, other goals of GGHH will also be explored and expanded. So in order to, since we are already at the stage, we realize that there is a lot of opportunity to also explore a new area, that is sustainable food systems across the network. And there was also a lot of initiatives that were taken up by our health members in this workspace. So which is why we realized it might be a good idea to connect all of us together, share some best practices, and also discuss some opportunities to scaling up of this work, as well as to also capture some perceptions about what health members
Looks like we lost Ananya there, Masroor.
Masroor,
Yeah.
you can start with my slide till she gets connected, and I think I'll take over.
Yeah. Or shall we give her a couple of minutes to,
Okay, actually, while we wait for Ananya, let me just take a couple of minutes to also do a little bit of context setting. Dr. Bhagat, I'll just hand over to you in a couple of minutes. So on my behalf, on behalf of my team at the Center for Chronic Disease Control, I also want to extend a warm welcome to all the participants here. Thank you to Ananya. Did we just lose her completely? Yeah.
we lost.
Yeah, but I think she'll rejoin. But I just wanted to also welcome you all to this next edition in our Climate Smart Healthcare webinar series and set a little bit of context beyond what Ananya already shared just now, as food being one of the 10 pillars of work within the global green and healthy hospitals. But beyond that, why are we in the health sector thinking about, getting into this sector and talking about food? We've been running this Climate Smart Healthcare webinar series to talk about the concept of climate smart in the health sector, which is basically, as I have been talking in the previous webinars, 2 pillars of action. One is preparedness of the health sector to attend to the surge in diseases that's going to occur as a result of acute climatic events in India, a country which is very prone and vulnerable to acute climate events. But also the other component, the other pillar of action is for mitigation. Now, mitigation in the health sector necessarily means reducing our emissions across what we call scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 of emissions. And while the scope 1 and scope 2 talks about actually the energy consumption within the healthcare facilities and during healthcare delivery, the scope 3 emissions is about all the emissions that come from our supply chain. And one of the biggest factors is how to reduce our emissions in the supply chain. And that means talking about upstream determinants of supply of goods and services to the hospitals and healthcare facilities, but also at the end of usage, how we discard of our wastes. And food is a big part of healthcare delivery as well, not necessarily because, all of us, it's one of the necessary things for sustenance of life, but also because many mid and small hospitals, as well as the larger hospitals, have their own food systems within the hospital. You have canteens, you have cafeterias, you also have patients and the healthcare providers bringing their own food. So food supplies is one thing, but also our food waste is another aspect of it. So if we look at, for example, the healthcare climate footprint, food is supposed to contribute, or agriculture is supposed to contribute about 9% of the health sector footprint. And that speaks to emissions coming from not just the food and the agricultural produce that we source and use, but also, for example, it also accounts for example, cotton that is used, that is grown and then sourced and used for stitching the OT gowns and stuff. So if it's cotton or whatever product. So there is a contribution by the agricultural sector to the healthcare climate footprint. And that is why we want to include that also in our discussions when we talk about becoming climate smart health sector. With that, the necessary focus on food systems is becoming a part of our dialogue as well, and our work hopefully in the future. And I'll hand over now to our first speaker, Dr. Bhagat, who I think Ananya already introduced. He's a very active and passionate member of our network. And I'm very pleased to have you here, sir, today. Hand over to you. Masroor, can you share, Dr. Bhagat? Yeah, Dr. Bhagat.
Thank you, Purnima. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. You rightly mentioned the footprint of healthcare on global warming and other areas. Definitely, it is huge because everybody uses it. Now, I always felt that healthcare is the biggest communicator. It can be my major communicator to the society on various issues. That is why I keep on delving into the various issues, not only in medicine. Medicine is part of my activity, but other areas are equally important because I can contribute because of my thinking abilities or my usage of various items. Basically, my activity into this food sector started as a hobby. And I had a farm and very close to my place, not very close, 1 hour from my place, but it had certain issues. But plantation and farming was my hobby. And from there, I moved on. Gradually, it increased. So next, if we see, Mansoor, next one.
You also go to screen share.
I couldn't, so I asked Mansoor to help me. So how did it start? We had a barren land, very poor soil. I got the soil tested by Pusa Institute, AIA, and very, very low in carbon. Sandy, low water retention, never used for agriculture. Slowly, we had to enrich it. We used various fertilizers, whatever we could lay hand on it, which included mostly what we call Okhla Khad or STV plant manure, and then followed it by cow dung organic manure. Now, cow dung created its own problem that it's not fully processed and leads to a lot of weeds. And then we moved on to vermicompost. Now here I had to do some innovation, but still to get some yield, I had to add urea and DAP to the crops to get some proper yield. Initial observation was that the soil is good for certain things, particularly Indian gooseberry, that is amla, mustard, citrus fruits, green vegetables, and other vegetables. Water was good in quality, pH was good. All these people who know about soil, they will understand it. That 7.4 is a very good pH for water, for agriculture water. TDS was also good. And whatever was growing in that was very sweet, very tasty. So this was in positive direction, and we started working on it. It took many years, but the production went up. Slowly and slowly, production went up. And we started working on the food part, utilizing this for our own purpose and as well as for my medical colleagues, as well as supplying it to my hospital, canteen and kitchen. Some of it, whatever I could. Now, the concept of organic came in that time. What I understood by organic, next one, sir. Whatever I understood from the organic was slightly different from whatever was projected in the market. Next slide, Mansoor. Can you shift the slide, Mansoor? So, Mansoor, next one. Can you shift? No, you should jump. Number 3. Number 3, what is organic? One before this. Right. Now, I had to understand what was organic because organic was becoming a market fad. So I started working on trying to understand the nutritional aspect. Basically, I am an anesthetist, so that was not my field, understanding food. But then since I was growing it, I had to understand it. Organic does not mean a weak output devoid of nutrition and tasteless. It has to be good in taste. It has to be free of chemicals. A mere certification, which many of the producers were having, does not make it a product organic. Sorry, product should be healthy and it should not lead to any disease. Nutrition supplied should be adequate, including the amino acids, vitamins, minerals, and trace elements. Now, when we talk of trace elements, people generally talk of very few trace elements, but in fact, there are 14 elements which act in our body at various levels. In the enzyme form or in the basic form, they are there. And how do we get these? Do we get it as supplement? And is the soil rich enough to provide all these things? So I started thinking about it. How do I do it? I believe in the concept that the food should be fresh, as should be used as early as it is taken from the field, especially vegetables. And we should rotate our food also. We cannot stick to one type of food because the body needs all the elements at any given time. And no food can give all the elements in a single form. So we need to rotate our. There should not be any stimulants which should be used, and unnecessary use of pesticides is to be avoided. Soil to be enriched by organic manures as far as possible, and that too varieties of manure. Cow dung properly processed is our preferred method, but now we have shifted to vermi. Next. So what process we adopted? Mansoor, next one, number 4. Next slide. Yeah. So what was the process? We fulfilled our requirements domestic, and we started supplying to hospital kitchen, as I mentioned. And the production was a huge variety. And one day I counted, it was more than 100 items which I could produce there. So I started thinking more about it because this was interesting, becoming more and more interesting. So next, the technical aspect started. What techniques we used? Next slide, number 5. The technical aspect was we started using drip irrigation because the soil was sandy and we could not fulfill the water requirement. So number 5, we started using drip irrigation that reduced our water consumption by 80%. So that was again to reduce the energy footprint because less water we are using, less minerals we are using, less supplements we are using. So after that, we started using drip irrigation and mulch farming. And from there, we moved to next. Mansoor, can you shift to next one? Yeah. Yes. Now the one before this. So we drip irrigation and mulch farming. Now the two combined reduced our weeds also, as well as it gave us much healthy crops. The first 2 pictures on the left, you can see that is drip irrigation and mulch farming. The plastic HDPE sheet, which is there, that is there. And then from there, I went during the COVID time. I had nothing to do, so I shifted to developing my own soil-less farming. So on the third picture on the right, the tubes you can see, that is soil-less farming I started. Now, when I started soil-less farming, I found that whatever mixture I was making, either I had to take it from the market or whatever I was making was always deficient in something. The leaves were not so healthy. So again, thought about it. And then I used to shifted to fishiculture, and started using the wastewater from the fishiculture for irrigation and as a manure. Now, this was very interesting because the water which was getting from the fishiculture gave us very, very healthy plants. There was no sign of any deficiency in the leaves, and the growth was also very good. So next we moved to understand what the challenges were there for me in this, moving further in this technology. And so next one, number 6. Yes, the challenges I faced was soil condition being very sandy and low in carbon. So electricity, erratic supply in rural areas, extremes or weather are there in northern India. Temperature goes very low, even up to 0 degree, and then up to 45, 47 degree. Termites was an issue in my soil. Seasonal variation in supply, total supply cannot be from the farm. I understood it long time back that I had to go to the market to buy things, but I must produce as much as possible from the soil. And the distance from the source, that is the hospital, was 45 kilometers. So not an easy thing, because it takes about 1.5 hours from moving on one side. Next. But what was the advantage? Number 7, Mansoor. What was the advantage? Advantage was it was healthy and fresh. The food was very tasty. Mansoor, number 7. Mansoor, can you shift? Number 7, yeah. It was healthy and fresh, very tasty. Cooking time was less by almost 20%, 25%. And of course, the saving was there because I was producing my own product. So this is what we did. Now next, number 8, Mansoor. Our observations. All this development of the system was based on my observation. Now, what was the observations? Next. Mansoor, next one.
Our innovation slide. It takes a little bit of time to change the slide.
Okay.
I guess there's a lag.
Our innovation. Huh? So what was this? Now, few pictures. Next few will be some pictures which will show what I did in my farm. So you can keep on changing one after another. This is a fishy culture tank. I think next, I cannot see it complete picture. This is a fishy culture tank. And from there, the water drainage system, which is taken it to the field and where we are using it. And there are some water is being diverted to the soilless farm. So the advantage was we were getting organic food, and I felt the food which we were getting was rich in almost everything. Plus some other items we picked up from our farm. That was, one was moringa. Moringa is quite popular in some areas of the country. Drumstick or sahajan, various names are there. These leaves we started using in our food as a supplement because it is rich in many items. So,
Dr. Bhagat, sorry to interrupt you. Mazrur, can you change this to slideshow and then try moving the slides? It's not in slideshow.
So these are various pictures of the my cultivation, which is there.
Not showing in slideshow. Sorry. Are you able to see the full screen? Because I am sharing the full screen over here.
No,
not yet.
No, I don't think so. No, it's not. Could you try that enable editing tab? Just click on that. Maybe.
Just a second. Let me try. Is it better now?
No, we are not seeing the presentation.
It's gone.
Oh.
Sorry,
let me try sharing again. Sorry for the glitch. Is it showing now?
Yes, it's showing now. Now maybe you can try that slideshow if it works.
No, I'm in slideshow mode only.
Okay.
I don't know why it's not showing on the other side.
Okay, can you move the slides according to Dr. Bhagat's instruction? I think
you just keep on changing one after another now. I am almost through.
Yeah.
I'm almost through, so you just keep on changing one after another.
Sure.
So, as I said, the soil is very sandy. You can see on the right side, and the left side you can see the drip mulch farming and drip irrigation. And more we worked on it, a few things which I decided that all the wastage of the vegetables, that is the peels, should go back to my soil because the carbon content was low. So I was recycling all the waste from the hospital and from the household back to the farm as much as possible. Not everything was possible. And at the same time, I tried to procure most of the vegetables directly from the farmers, small farmers. That way, I was able to support them also, and I was getting cheaper vegetables also as compared to, and since I was getting directly from the farmers, I was getting it as fresh as possible. So these are the few measures which I took to make it more sustainable for my hospital. Not a very cohesive effort, but yes, it gave me the desired results. I was able to give nutritious food to my family, to my colleagues, and to my patients in the hospital as much as possible. So this is about the now how to use the hospital waste or the kitchen waste, how to process the kitchen waste of the hospital. There are two processes which we had seen when we visited Singapore. One was processing the manure through energy dependent means, and the other is non-energy dependent through earthworm waste. Both the processes are good, but I would prefer the earthworm waste, because if you can process the waste food through this, you will not be spending any energy, and we want to reduce the energy footprints of the hospital. So, and other things I mentioned, that generate your own manure as far as possible. That will help you be less dependent on the outside manure. And using the kitchen waste to produce manure will reduce the municipal waste also, which we already know that many cities of India, they are being overburdened by the municipal waste, and kitchen waste makes 70% of the municipal waste. So we can reduce that on that if we start sending the kitchen waste directly to the farms to be used as a organic manure. Thank you very much. That was what I wanted to present. And if you can move the slides, fine. Otherwise, this is what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bhagat. This was a very interesting presentation and a great initiative. So thank you so much. And we're really sorry for the technical glitches. So moving on, I would like to invite Dr. Ramajanelu now, who is the Executive Director at Center for Sustainable Agriculture, Secunderabad. He will be presenting on consolidating market channels for sustainably grown foods, opportunities for Indian healthcare sector establishments. Dr. Ramu, over to you.
Thank you, Ananya. And there was an interesting presentation from Dr. Bhagat. So I'll not get into the practices per se, but I'll be mostly talking about how the choices are, and then what are the opportunities available, how we can link up those kind of things. So I work with an organization called Center for Sustainable Agriculture. Center for Sustainable Agriculture so we work in 9 states where we work with farmers to convert them into organic and natural farming. So we support farmers to make this transition, and we also organize farmers into cooperatives so that they can become, they can also directly link to the markets. So we work nearly with 250 farmer cooperatives, and then in these 250 cooperatives, about 25,000 farmers today are fully organic, and then there are many more farmers who are in the transition period. So the idea is by next 5 years we'll be working with about nearly 2 lakh farmers. So mostly our cooperative groundwork is in Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Maharashtra, but we also support farmers in Karnataka, Himachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Tripura, Assam, and Nagaland. These are the states where we support farmers. So in terms of core work which we do, like I mentioned earlier, farmer cooperatives is something which we are very largely promoting, and then we work very closely with these cooperatives. And this is one opportunity which you all need to consider. So in the hospitals, if you need regular supplies, directly you can now tie up with the farmer cooperatives. In the across the country, there are nearly 10,000 farmer cooperatives which are coming up. So it's at 10,000 FPOs which are coming up. So you can directly buy from them. And then this can also help in terms of getting better price for the farmers. And then for hospitals also, it will be much easier. You can buy directly from the farmers, so they can process, pack, and give you. So that's a new channel which was never existing earlier. So farmers can aggregate and then give you. This is something which you need to explore. For Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, if there are anybody who are interested, we can directly connect and then do this. We supply to other stores in other areas as well. So we can do bulk supplies also. Many of these cooperatives will also do bulk supplies. So we have exclusively about 30 cooperatives which are farm completely organic and about 40 which are mixed. And then there are remaining 156 where we support them. So we do support the FPOs in the transition period. So very importantly, like in the introduction, both Ananya and Purnima has mentioned, ecological footprints is something which is very, very critical, which we need to look. So today, as consumers, we are not even worried about what is happening to us with the food which we are consuming, and leave aside what is happening to the environment or what is happening to the farmer who is growing it. So at these three levels, there are concerns. So the first, let's look at the ecological footprints. So in the ecological footprints, the issue is about the amount of natural resources used and the amount of natural resources damaged. Both are very, very important. And by producing so much, by utilizing this one, what are the residues which are coming into your food or which we are throwing out? So as a waste, we are throwing out, what is the kind of ecological footprints of that? These are the certain things which we need to clearly look at. Many times we are not much worried about this one. So for example, water, if we take water footprint, it's the biggest culprit today across the country is the paddy. So the rice production takes a lot of water. So more and more people consuming rice will have more and more water footprint. And an acre of rice, 1 acre of rice requires nearly 60 lakh liters of water, which is about nearly 100 families consuming over a period of 1 year. 100 families 1 year water, and nearly about 1 kg of rice requires about 5,000 liters of water, which is nearly equal to one tanker. And there are practices which can reduce the water usage by more than 50%. But many times since the food is not labeled about how much water it is used, so we never look at what is our ecological footprint of our food, particularly from a water point of view. So water, energy, and chemicals, these are the three footprints which we need to be worrying about. So what we try to look at is, in addition to talking to the people, and this also has a very vicious cycle of impacts on each other. For example, if we are all shifting towards more water consuming crops and we need more of dams means we need more of electricity or more of displacement, and then there is a lot of impact on the climate change. And then who gets benefit out of this transition towards high water intensive crops? And then what will be the impact on environment? If you look at, we try to make an ecological footprint label, develop this one from Telangana. So in Telangana, and obviously if you look at across the country, there's a similar kind of footprint labeling we can look at. So paddy production in Telangana, we have about 1 crore acres, is 100 lakh acres, and nearly about 100 million metric tons of carbon emissions comes from just this paddy production. It is for the fertilizer used. So fertilizers, nitrous oxide is only 15% effective. So 85%, in the 85%, it either spoils water and evaporates into environment as nitrous oxide emissions. So if you take nitrous oxide emissions, similarly, when there is a water stagnation, there is a methane emission. So when we are calculating ecological footprints, particularly from a greenhouse gases point of view, and if you're looking at mitigation, we need to calculate the life cycle of the product. So what we are eating and how it is grown, and what happens to the environment because of that is something which we need to look at. So in terms of 100 million metric tons of carbon emissions from just paddy production in Telangana is equal to nearly about 21 million cars traveling for nearly 1 year. So you can imagine the amount of pollution it causes. And we always feel by planting trees, we can absorb this one. Nearly about 1,653 million trees absorbing the carbon dioxide for over 10 years is the ecological footprint of the amount of carbon emissions which are coming from this paddy production. So similarly, being in Delhi, all of you must be knowing about the stubble burn. and it contributes nearly about 6 to 7% of the total pollution of the Delhi air. But in terms of particulate matter, it is much higher, since it is also a season right now we are experiencing. There is a fog, the smoke gets mixed up with that, and then there's a smog which is formed, and that causes a lot of respiratory problems as well. And this comes in mainly because there is a right wheat system in Punjab. They grow rice and wheat, and then government procures only rice and wheat. So obviously all farmers' choices are into rice and wheat. And between the two seasons, since there is no crop, the gap, they burn the residues, and then that's what everybody is experiencing. So if you want to reduce rice and wheat in Punjab, obviously the choice is about shifting away from rice and wheat consumption. So unless that is done, this is not going to happen. So the kind of relationship between production and consumption is also something which we need to look at. So that's where actually we can look at how hospitals can play an important role, how food choices affect not only the directly having harmful effects on the consumers because of the residues of pesticides, fertilizers, antibiotics, or genetically modified foods. That's one direct impact, but indirectly the kind of choices we make has an impact on the environment, and then that in turn affects us. That is something which also we need to certainly make a education to the consumers or the patients which you come to you. So that is something which is very, very important. And coming to the food waste, again, whenever we see food waste, we see it stinks, and then we all feel it's very damaging to the environment. So we all campaign for Swachh Bharat kind of thing. So unless farms are cleaner and every individual household processes the waste at their home, it comes into the moment it comes onto the road, this is what happens. So how household level composting can be done is something which is very, very important. Reducing the food wastage is one part of it. Second part of it is about how do you process it is the second part of it, is something which we need to worry about. The more you centralize, more complications will come in, and that's what leads to many other health complications which we are seeing because of the wrong handling of the food wastage. And also, in addition to the production, there are problems in the processing and storage. Highly polished rice is directly contributing for the diabetes, and how the consumer education can be done at the hospital level so that people can shift towards more of semi-polished or low-polished rice. Brown rice is something which is important, even if they're consuming rice, or switching over to millets and other products, how that can be done. Similarly, we always tell people to consume fruits, but calcium carbide ripened fruits are very unhealthy. In fact, they cause more health problems. Similarly, wax-coated apples, which we see in the market, and trans fats in the edible oils. These are all the additives or wrong ways of processing, which contributes for the health problem. So when we are talking to the consumers or the patients, how do we create this awareness so that they can make right choices is something which is very, very critical. Similarly, about the food adulteration, we always think milk is most healthy, and synthetic milk has become now part of our life, and nearly 20 to 30% of the milk which is sold in all metros is considered to be synthetic. And what is synthetic milk? Synthetic milk is made using urea, jaggery, and vegetable oil. If you mix together, it exactly looks like milk, and your lactometer also cannot catch that. That's something which is happening everywhere. Every popular brand has been seen to be having the synthetic milk. And similarly, metallic colors on the greens, leafy vegetables, which we are finding is increasing. So metallic greens, metallic colors are added to look leafy vegetables greener. And similarly, growth hormones are used in the fruits and animals. Animal oils are mixed into the vegetable oils. Turmeric, chili powder, and teas are adulterated. So adulteration is something which also we need to tell people about, be cautious. Similarly, hospitals, when they procure food, rather than going only by what is the price, because normally when the tenders are called for, you go by L1. kind of thing. Can we look at the sources as well? What is the source, how it is grown? If that can be incorporated into your tendering system, probably more healthier food can come into the hospitals. And today you don't have that kind of difficulty in accessing, because across the country there are a number of farmers who are making the shift, and they're also getting organized. And very importantly, the art of mixing vegetables, fruits and vegetables, and the combinations of food we use should be colorful. So each of the color which we see of food is representing a nutrient. So all colors are representing the nutrients. So depending on the health conditions, what is the better combination of colors we need to have is also something which is important. Today, if you see most of the time, when you, just imagine what was your lunch plate was looking today, and mostly it will be pale, it will be white, whitish, and at the most yellow in color, nothing else. All colors disappeared from our food. So how do we make our food more colorful is something which is very, very important. So can hospitals experiment with that and then get that onto the plates of the people is something which is important. So coming to our work, in addition to working with the farmers, we also try to convert villages into fully organic so that their water, their fodder, everything becomes organic. So that's what we make an effort. Today, we have a number of villages which are completely converted into organic production. And we organize them into cooperatives, and cooperatives sell directly to the consumers. Sahajaram is one of the farmer producer company which sells these directly to the consumers. Today, they have stores across the cities of Hyderabad and Visakhapatnam, and we sell to other buyers across. And this way, our prices, the Sahajaram producer companies' prices are around 20% over the conventional market prices, 20% over conventional market prices, and nearly about 30 to 40% lower than any of the organic food market food prices, because the entire supply chain is owned by the farmer cooperatives. So we sell, we produce from seed to final product in the farmers cooperatives. So processing, everything is done in the farmer cooperatives itself. And similarly, when we talk about quality of food, how do we ensure the quality? So in India, it is made mandatory to have organic certification now. So there are two kinds of certifications which are in place in India. One is called as the PGS, Participatory Guarantee System, and second one is called as the India Organic, which is a NPOP certification. There are two certification systems. Both has a traceability system up to the farmer group level, where you can know which farmer group has produced that product, and then what are the methods they followed. And export markets have additional certifications, like USDA has USDA certification, EU has EU certification, like that. And when the certification is done, there is a verification of the process of production. There is also a sample residue testing done, and then the wild collections, if they are done, they are also verified and then labeled onto the bracket. So we can have pesticide free, we can have PGS organic, we can have certified organic. So all these kind of different grades of products are available with the farmers in India across. So coming to the Sahajaram, which is our farmer cooperative, which is producing. So they produce cereals, millets, oil seeds, cold pressed oil, sweeteners, spices, ingredients like masalas, processed foods, ready to eat, ready to cook, health foods, fresh fruits and vegetables. And then we also supply in bulk to many players. This is something which we are doing. In addition, we also engage with households so that they can also grow their own vegetables. So we promote something called a City Grow, where urban consumers can grow their vegetables in the spaces which they have, and we support them in Hyderabad and Visakhapatnam. Similarly, we work with schools and then help schools to grow their own vegetables to meet their entire hostel requirement. So we have, say, for about 600 people, on average, vegetable requirement is about 150 kg per day, and then 150 kg vegetables to get on a daily basis, 365 days. If you need to have a harvest of 14 vegetables, you need about 3 acres of land. That's what we tried, and then now we are piloting it with 7 schools for last 1 year, and then we could see that every day harvest can come in. It's a fresh harvest, locally grown, and grown by the school children, and then they are consuming. So similar kind of models can be done with the hospital. So we can have a direct partnership with the any of the farmers cooperative which can produce for you. So you will know how they are grown, what they are using, and all that labeling can come in. So that's kind of work which we are trying to do. And then much more information, if you want, you can look at many of the videos which are available and also on our websites. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ramajanelu. This was a really insightful presentation, I must say. It was very comprehensive and it sort of encompassed some of the very critical aspects of building sustainable food systems. In a way, it has answered several of our questions that whenever we that come to our minds whenever we think of sustainable sourcing and or procurement of sustainably grown food, and how to procure it, where to procure it from, if there are any model examples. So it sort of included everything from environmental benefits, health benefits, to economical feasibility, and the example and specifics of the demand and supply for school models and the way it can be replicated, or the potential opportunity that it can be replicated for the health sector as well. So thank you so much. I think the discussions and the presentations by both our speakers have been really insightful. Both are reflecting on the key aspects of building sustainability in the Indian healthcare sector, defining the role of health sector, as well as trying to leverage the market opportunities as well. Just wanted to elaborate a little bit more on the role of health sector that I was trying to cover in the earlier part of the webinar, how crucial it is. And I just think that it is important to also share some of the best practices that exist across our network, because there are plenty of hospitals that are doing some really good work when it comes to building sustainable food systems, not just by managing their food waste on site, but also by growing their own food. Like one of the example is Dr. Bhagat's hospital.
Dr. Bhagat.
So I think I'll just take a moment to go back and share a few more examples from our network, so that everyone can get a sense of like where we are at the moment. So So speaking of the best practice examples that exist across our network, Lokmanya Tilak Municipal General Hospital, Mumbai is a public sector hospital. It is also a health member, and in order to reduce the load and associated carbon emissions with respect to the transportation of food waste to the municipal dump site, they had taken up an initiative of treating their dry food as well as wet food waste on site through vermicomposting as well as aerobic bacterial composting. The manure that they are using that is generated from both the processes is used for maintaining campus plantations. They also have an on-site kitchen garden. You can see at the extreme right of the screen. And it's a small scale kitchen garden that they have set up at the moment, but it is planned to be scaled up so that it can fulfill the requirements of the canteen and the nurse quarters that they have on campus. Similar initiative has been taken up by another public sector hospital in Mumbai, which is Dr. R.N. Cooper Municipal General Hospital. They are also treating their food waste and dry leaves through vermicomposting, and the manure generated out of it is used for maintaining campus plantations as well as a dedicated kitchen garden. At the moment, part of the produce from the kitchen garden is used on a weekly basis, or as per the produce is there available, in whichever quantity. They try to maybe for example, one dish is prepared out of from the produce that they get from their on-site kitchen garden. Then another example which actually went ahead of all the other examples across our network is Arvind Eye Care Hospital that is situated in Pondicherry. So all of their canteen supply comes from the on-site kitchen garden that they have set up. So what they're doing is they have a couple of, they have a huge campus. Of course, that is something that we have to acknowledge that many other hospitals across our network may not be able to do that because of the lack of space and area. But just to show and just to share an example of what all they have been doing with the space and whatever resources they have. So they have set up an on-site kitchen garden where they are growing fruits and vegetables, and all of the produce goes to fulfill the canteen supply. They have 2 canteens on campus, and they decide menu according to the produce. And they also have been growing paddy on site. So this has been primarily for the commercial purpose, but a lot of produce is left behind, and they are using it for the canteen supply as well. Whatever waste is generated, the dry leaves and the food waste, it all goes into the vermicomposting pit that they have on campus. And the manure, again, it's like a closed cycle kind of a thing, that whatever manure is generated from this process, it goes back for the maintenance of the campus plantations, kitchen gardens. They also have a dedicated herbal garden, and they also have set up a nursery on site, which is of course used for commercial purposes. So these are some of the best examples that we can look at and see that there is a lot of interest which is shown by our health members. And like Dr. Ramajanelu shared, for those who are unable to have such initiative due to any of the constraints in terms of resources, in terms of land or budget, they can, there is potential to also explore the sourcing of sustainably grown food outside through these FPOs or these markets. So if there is any more information that people would like to know, you can visit the link, our website, about the case studies as well as the webinar series. And for any questions and queries, you can email us at health.ch@phfi.org. Moving on, now I think we would like to start the discussion session. So I'll just stop sharing.
Ananya, that's a nice presentation. Can you share this?
Sure, I will share this. So I think we can begin with our discussion session now. And this will be between Dr. Ramajanelu and Dr. Bhagat. And I would like to invite both of our speakers to share their thoughts on role of Indian healthcare sector towards building institutional procurement supply chain for sustainably grown food.
So I think, Ananya, both of us made certain points, and some of them are common. So the common points I would like to emphasize first is, one, we should try to have some part of our produce as from our own sources wherever feasible, depending on the land size which is available. Number two, the waste from the hospital, the municipal waste, kitchen waste, should go back to the fields which we are using to generate manure and to generate food. Wastage has to be cut down as much as possible. Rotation of the crops and rotation of what we are eating is what Dr. Rama also mentioned, I also mentioned, that we should keep on mixing our food regularly. He mentioned what the color chart. I mentioned that we should, depending on the season, we should keep on mixing our food. We should not be dependent on one particular type of food, because as I said, we have 14 trace elements. And these 14 trace elements, they all produce some colors. And the colors come in the form of the plate which he mentioned. So no pigment can be generated without the addition of these trace elements. Our hemoglobin is made of iron. So that is one element which we use. But selenium, molybdenum, and all those things, there are 14 trace elements which our body, or maybe more, are there, because human knowledge is never complete. So that is there. And then coming to the staple food, which he mentioned, production of paddy and using so much water. Yes, Punjab and Haryana has suffered because of this greed of the farmers to produce basmati rice, which was going very expensive. And in the process, in 15 years' time, they reduced their groundwater level from 10 to 12 feet to 200 feet below the surface. So that was the human greed which has led to this problem, excessive use of water. Now here we are caught between two things. One, wheat, and second is rice. Two of our components of staple food. Now, there is a fashion now, or maybe it is actually there. Is there so much gluten allergy that people have started avoiding wheat? Is it really there or is it not there? We need to have it scientific papers on this thing, because everybody who gets some irritable bowel syndrome or anything, they just mention it that we have gluten allergy, I'll eat rice. But I feel we have an alternative also. The alternative is to use multigrain using millets, and that will encourage the soil also. And millets, they consume very less water as compared to the other crops. Wheat also uses less water. Mustard also uses very less water. And then the supplements has to be from the other sources also at the same time. Like I mentioned about moringa leaves, something I've been fascinated in last 2 years. 70 ingredients in this particular, with 8 of them essential amino acids, fiber, and zinc, selenium, molybdenum, and magnesium, iron. So many things are there. Maybe copper is not there in that. So many things are there in these. And one of the easily growing plant. I feel this is a solution to our food problem, especially for the school-going children. That if they add 1 or 2 spoons of this moringa leaf powder, which is one of the easiest going plant, in 3 years' time, it can gain a height of 30 feet. And if you keep on chopping it, it will keep on regrowing it. So one of the easiest, I feel this is one of the best food supplements which we can have, easy, cheap, and nutritious. For our children, for the midday school meals also, we can encourage, and our regular other members also, they can use it. So some of the comments, I think I will now hand over to Dr. G.V. Ramu to make some comments, and then we can carry on with the further discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Bhagat. See, I think when we are talking from the hospital sustainable food systems in the role of hospitals in building sustainable hospitals, one part of it is about growing. Second part of it is about sourcing, so that in the hospitals, wherever you are serving food, they can have good food. Also very important is about advising people about importance of food choices is very, very important. Because hospitals are the very credible source of information. We were actually making a survey about talking to the consumers, and then where they get their information so that to have a right choice. So I think if more and more hospitals talk about to their patients, creating awareness about why their food should be a right choice, and then whether it's about having a combination of foods or about residues in the food, if we keep talking about it, I think it will be a better choices which people can make. And then the last part of it is about the handling the waste. So again, when we are talking about handling the waste, while how to handle at the hospital level is one issue. Second important issue is also about how consumers handle their waste at home, because that also causes a lot of problems. So if everybody throws out and then it starts stinking around their houses, their problems goes up. So just blaming municipality will not help. So how they can start doing that at their household level also. So I think this a kind of integration is something which is very, very critical. So individuals' food choices, and then how hospitals can become a awareness tool. So how hospitals can also, as an awareness hub, is also something which is very, very important. I think that's what I would see. And then partnerships in terms of our sourcing, directly partnering with farmers is always good, because both can get benefit out of it, because we don't need to get into markets, and then hospitals need not go to the market. So it's much easier. And when there's a bulk procurement, then farmers also will feel happy. And today from the crisis, they also can get out. So closed loop markets, I think that's a sustainable food system. When we talk about sustainable food system, producer knowing who is the consumer, and then consumer knowing who is the producer is the best way. So connecting them makes good sense.
Very, very rightly said. We need to connect the two things. Same vehicle can be used to deliver the vegetables to the hospital, and same vehicle can lift the kitchen
Entire
waste
waste and
and
waste.
deliver
Correct.
it back to the fields.
Farmer.
And if
Yes.
that can be done, the municipal corporations of India will be very, very happy lot, because the
Correct.
municipal waste will be much less. So,
Much
and
less.
farmers will be happy. And I
Very.
know the difference in the price, because
Correct.
I keep on visiting the market. The difference in the price when you buy directly from the producer and the quality of food is almost 30 to 40%. So if you want to save that much money, the hospitals of India, they should make some effort. Send your marketing team to the field to explore this particular aspect, because every hospital has, every namesake hospital, big hospital, has a kitchen, and which consumes hundreds and hundreds of kgs of food, vegetables from the market. So if they can manage to save on this, they should put in some effort, and definitely their patients will be getting better food.
Correct. 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 I think that's a very good way to put in, Dr. Bhagat. Probably what I would suggest, Ananya, is probably creating few more webinars like this, so that more awareness can be created, probably short videos where these can be made and then released to the people, so that more hospitals can get aware of this. And then the cases you present are wonderful. So if you can have, say, a 2 minutes video or 3 minutes videos of all these, and then if the people like Dr. Bhagat can speak out all these issues, I think it will be a good way to campaign about food. And we'll be very happy to be partnering with you all these, because we work across the country with number of organizations also. So we can easily take it to the producers, we can easily take it to the consumers as well. So it will be a very good win-win combination we can try out.
Thank you so much for this really rich discussion, Dr. Bhagat and Dr. Ramajanelu. I think the purpose why we had gathered here is in a way getting solved, because these are really important aspects of building sustainable food systems when it comes to within the healthcare sector, and what is the role of healthcare sector. And so I can see that there are two major areas that needs to get addressed, or some change needs to be brought up in those areas. So one is at the hospital end, at the consumer end, and the other is at the market end. So when we speak of consumers or at the hospital end, like Dr. Bhagat said, we need to leverage whatever opportunity we have or whatever possibilities we have, we need to explore. So even if it is a small land, some of the produce, like one of the examples that I also showed. So the hospital doesn't have much of area to, plant a lot of, vegetables or fruits or whatever they want to, plant over there. But they are whatever they are trying to plant on site in that kitchen garden. They are trying to at least source one of the meal or like one dish out of their entire canteen menu, which is coming from an on-site kitchen garden. So similar initiatives can be helpful. The other ripe opportunity is handling their kitchen waste in the most sustainable manner, rightly pointed out by Dr. Ramajanelu and by Dr. Bhagat. And third is having a closed loop market, so that the consumer knows where the food is coming from, and in terms of bulk purchases or where bulk purchases is required, these small FPOs can come into the picture. And lastly, about promoting the healthy food choices, where the role of health sector comes in. So I think this has been a great discussion. And I would like to now request Dr. Purnima, who's the Deputy Director of Center for Environmental Health, to share some of her views.
I mean, I have nothing much to add to this rich interaction and deliberations. Thank you for organizing and for putting this together. And my sincere thanks to both Dr. Bhagat and Dr. Ramajanelu, because I mean, I think this is a space that has not been talked about much within our health sector, but it has really got a lot of promise. And I think the examples that we have seen, Dr. Bhagat has shared, and Ananya shared some of the case studies that we have documented. Even public hospitals like Lokmanya Tilak and the R.N. Cooper, they are public hospitals. So if they can fight the system and start initiatives within their facility, then I think there is a lot of scope for change. And I think, Dr. Ramanjulu, your perspectives on the sustainable food systems, the entire supply chain, the life cycle analysis, the opportunities with the farmer cooperatives. Dr. Bhagat, I was just wondering, since you started this initiative, we should have hospital cooperatives now. I think just focusing on food, your sustainable growing and sourcing and procuring for your hospital, if that can be an example that can be amplified for even your neighborhood hospitals or small facilities. I think that every baby step counts, and we need champions like you all to kind of take this forward for the Indian healthcare system. It's happening in other parts of the world, and in India, I suppose we still live with the problem of the two ends of the malnutrition spectrum and all that. So if the health sector can lead the way in kind of becoming sustainable in the way we use our procure, grow, procure, and use our food and dispose of our food waste, I think we would have set an example for other sectors to follow suit. Hospitality sectors, I mean, that's, I don't know how we can even start talking to them about sustainability. There may be examples out there, but I think as health sector champions, we can make a change, we can make a difference. And thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your perspectives. And thank you, Ananya and Mazroor, for putting this together as well. That's all. We will continue to associate with you, because this is an area, like Ananya shared, that we certainly want to grow within our work, this portfolio of working with food systems. And we'll definitely keep in touch with you on this as we move ahead. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Purnima. Thanks, Ananya.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bhagat. Good to know about your work.
If there are any questions, I think
Yes.
if anyone from the audience has any questions or queries, you can just go ahead with that.
None. I would just like to add that many in the hospitality sector are using their own farming. Let me tell you, Oberoi uses products from its own farm, from very close to my farm. They use their, that is why their food is one of the best. And we can all make a small beginning. We need not aim for 100% compliance, but even if we can start from 5%, 10%, we should do it as early as possible. No questions from audience, no comments from audience. Ananya, I think you can pack up now.
Abhijit has his hand raised, I think. Can he unmute and speak?
Just a second, Abhijit. I'm allowing you to talk. Yeah, Abhijit, go ahead with your question.
So I am audible now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for this nice two presentations. Actually, I have a very small one question for Dr. Bhagat, actually, about the adaptive method that he talked about. Is a drip irrigation, and the produce that he got is much better than what he perhaps expected, and what is the usual practice. So my question is that, are you aware that the government of India has a micro irrigation policy for the agriculture sector as well, for the sustainable agriculture, and the drip irrigation actually saves a lot of carbon dioxide emissions all over India, actually. So apart from good produce, actually, it also kind of reduces the carbon footprint. Yeah, so that is one thing. And another question is for the second presentation, that's about the paddy, actually, that we talked about, and the amount of water that goes into the paddy production. I just wanted to tell that methane is also a gas which gets produced a lot. It's one of the most important greenhouse gas, and it gets produced a lot for the paddy production, actually. So just quick two comments maybe from you two experts on these two issues. Thank you.
Yeah. So first you mentioned about the drip irrigation. Drip irrigation combined with mulch farming it reduces water utilization. And for production of this water, because everything doesn't come from the rain, so we have to take the subsoil water. If we can save water by 90%, which is a fact, that drip irrigation and mulch farming reduces water consumption by 90%, you save 90% electricity.
Right.
That's a major impact which it can do. And production is definitely better. And whatever micronutrients we add, we deliver at the point of usage rather than spreading. And moreover, the soil also is better, because if we add the irrigation system, the conventional irrigation system, what happens is more water you add, all the nutrients, all the fertilizers, it goes into the subsoil water.
Okay.
And this subsoil water gets hardened then. And your
Okay.
soil is deprived of the nutrients.
Okay.
So better is to go for drip irrigation wherever possible. And of course, for wheat and rice, you cannot use, but for vegetables, definitely one should try this thing.
Okay, and is there any plan to go into the full time about the drip irrigation?
Hey, trees, when you plant the trees, you can go for this.
Okay.
But yes, as I mentioned, wheat and other things, you cannot. For trees, initial growth of the trees can be boosted by using drip irrigation whenever you are putting trees there.
Okay. Okay.
And it will save, it will give you early growth of the trees.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Bhagat.
Abhijit, about the ecological footprint, when I mentioned
Right.
about it's nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide, and methane, three together. So the numbers I mentioned is the carbon dioxide equivalents to understand it better.
Okay.
So
Okay.
three are a problem.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we've reached at the end of this webinar, and we would like to just wrap up. But before we wrap up, I just wanted to thank Dr. Purnima and Rajita for constantly guiding us in organizing this webinar. And thank you, Masroor, for everything, for all the help, for helping putting this event together. And have a great evening, everyone. Thank you again for joining us here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
वहाँ पे